Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Just going to give another moment for a few more people to show up. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Sarah Mazze. I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator at 4J School District, and I'm going to kick off our conversation today about engineering and infrastructure as it relates to Safe Routes to School. I'll be sharing a prioritization tool that the Eugene Springfield Safe Routes to School team came up with. And then my counterpart, Laughton Elliott-Deangelis, who works for Springfield Public Schools, will be sharing our bike parking tool, our assessment tool. And then Abra McNair from Portland Bureau of Transportation is going to share a bit about their infrastructure prioritization tool and their priority routes. So got some cute kid pics gratuitously strewn throughout, so enjoy. It's from our Kinder Learn to Ride program. Okay, move ahead here. All right, so like I said, the infrastructure prioritization tool that I'll be talking about, it was developed by our regional team here in the Eugene Springfield area. It consists of the Bethel School District, the Eugene 4J School District, and Springfield Public School District. The tool was made with the help of Lane Transit District's Transportation Options Program, which sadly, because of coronavirus, doesn't exist right now, but hopefully will return in a different form. So why create a tool? We clearly have far more need than there are funds to develop infrastructure projects around schools. But the good news in Oregon, at least, is that we do have some funds available with the state infrastructure funds. And in Eugene, we actually are lucky enough to have pavement bond measures that have passed with money set aside for bike and pedestrian projects, some of which go to Safe Routes to School projects each year. And then in 4J, the last two bond measures to build new schools have included a set aside for infrastructure projects that could be spent off-site. We'll see if that happens this time around. We feel like even though this tool was developed a few years ago, it's actually even more relevant now in our current context. We have reduced transit, and we're really hoping, all of us, that I'm sure you're on the same page as me here, that all those transit riders don't hop into single occupancy vehicles and instead take to our streets using active transportation. Also, we are seeing bike sales shoot up and more people are walking and biking for recreation. Hopefully we can convert those people to using biking and walking, skating and scooting for transportation as well. But that's going to take more improved infrastructure. Another piece of good news is that unlike our neighbors down to the south in California, road construction has been ongoing during this coronavirus pandemic. So there is still opportunity for construction. Looking at moving away from coronavirus and into the attention to the racial inequities that have been ongoing. These tools really are designed to address those directly, in part by explicitly accounting and giving weight and priority to equity concerns, and also to because they are an objective means of prioritizing infrastructure needs, rather than just listening to the squeaky wheel. So when I started this job a few years ago, the city of Eugene traffic engineer was the lead on Eugene's Vision Zero plan, and he said to me, I want to know your top 5 safe routes to school projects, and I want to know why. And at that point, there wasn't really a way to tell him why, except that I've heard a lot about these being problem areas. And meanwhile, we also saw safe routes to school funds from the state coming down the line. So regionally, we came together and started work on creating a way of ranking projects that we hoped would be objective. There are certainly places that we hear a lot about, that our jurisdictions hear a lot about, that are important. They're problem areas, but they might not be the highest priority problem areas. Now we have a way of saying not just those aren't the top need, but also, you know, I've been able to tell people who are coming to me with a problem area, I hear you, which is good to be able to say, I hear you, your project's on our list. It ranks number 35, or it ranks number 135. So help me advocate for improvements across the board so we can get to your project. So, okay, what is an objective tool? We started out thinking this would be objective, but we quickly came to realize that what we put in there, what we decide to measure, reflects our values. And so if you decide to use this tool, you can craft it to reflect your community's values as well. And we got partner input on that. I think that everyone here, I'm recognizing names. I guess I don't know if you're all here from Oregon, but we're a mid-sized city, mid-sized cities, Eugene, Springfield, largely white. About, you know, census says we're a quarter, 23% in poverty, now probably more, but that's unevenly distributed. If you look at this, the state scorecards for the schools, you can see that some schools have much higher concentrations of wealth than other schools. Below average violent crime, that's not people's primary concern, or that's not our primary concern for people using the streets, but above average property crime. Although there is still a lot of fear of stranger danger that we hear about. So the priorities that we wanted to infuse into this tool, the top 2 were traffic safety and equity. And for us, equity means distributing the resources where they're needed, not just in an equal manner. So distributing them to account for historic marginalization of certain communities and historic underinvestment in certain neighborhoods. Other priorities that we came up with, or that our partners came up with, was mutual benefit. It should be not just, these projects shouldn't be just important for the school commute time, but also for people trying to get to the store or to church. Shovel ready was important, and how close they are to the school. We designed this tool so that you don't need GIS to use it. You can just use basic computer skills. We use data that was accessible to us, that if you're in Oregon should be accessible to you, except for just one piece. It's pretty quick to input data. It takes about 20 minutes for the first project at a school, about 10 minutes for your next schools after, or next projects at that same school after that. And we didn't want this to be the end all be all, because that would have made it much, much more complicated. So really this is just designed so that we can get a top 30 list or a top 10 list when there's funding available, and then sift through those using other information available to us. And it has been really useful for that. So to arrive at this tool, we started out looking at what was out there, and we found tools that were much, much more complicated and much simpler. We honed in on what was important to us, those values and priorities. We ran a few projects through a test with Lane Council of Government interns. We took it to our partners and said, what do you think of this? Traffic engineers, planners, are we using the right metrics here for measuring road safety, for example? And then we started the long slog of getting the data about getting schools inputted into this project. And then actually we had another round of interns who were Excel whizzes, and they made our tool even snazzier. So the criteria that we're using, and we do have this in a handbook that I'll show you in a moment, but like I said, safety and equity are at the top. The high score is for projects that are the highest need. So the safety measures, we used as many objective things as we could, as many objective data points as we could, like road width, are there traffic lights, where's the nearest crossing if you're talking about a crossing project, do sidewalks exist, even incomplete sidewalks, if you're looking at pedestrian facilities. We had does it shorten the route, because we know that's important for students trying to get to school. Our only really subjective one, I think, is the level of how much of a barrier is it, because that depends on who you're talking about, of course. It might be a barrier for someone who's in a wheelchair, but not someone who is walking without a mobility device. The equity points could be as high as the safety, but most of them fall in the 10 to 45 point range. And for that, we use and most of the safety measures, by the way, you can get on the ground and you can get off Google Maps using measuring tools and things like that. The equity factors largely are for the school population, because that's the best data that we can get, because the state comes out with school report cards every year that share the percentage of students of color at any given school, the English language learners, special ed students, and the students receiving free and reduced lunch. That's the bulk of our equity score, but then we also wanted a geographic measure, because students choice into different schools other than their neighborhood school. So the school population might not reflect the neighborhood population. So in Lane County, we have, our public health department has put together a mapping tool that looks at things like proximity to a grocery store, proximity to accessibility of guns, BMI, life expectancy, and then they have an overall ranking, and we use that. That may or may not be something that you've got access to in other communities. Mutual benefit, that's how many bus stops are nearby that people might be trying to get to, how many stores, each of those would get a point, and multifamily housing units, so those would get up to 10 points. How close is it to a school? Closer is more points. Is it in a plan, or has it been informally approved, like in conversation? Yes, this is going to go in the update to our transportation system plan. More points for closer to being shovel ready. And we don't define the solution. We leave that to the traffic engineer and planners, but we define the problems. This is just a little piece of the tool, but it's a snapshot of a part of it. It's a spreadsheet. It auto calculates all those pieces that I just talked about. And I can share this with you. We don't have this just publicly up on available anywhere, but well, I think we have an old version on our website, but I can send you a blank version if you're interested in using this and adapting this for your community. Here, I just wanted to point out especially how that equity piece comes into play. So at the top, you have this example at our highest need school, and you can see this scores highly across the board, pretty high for safety, high for equity, and top scores for mutual benefit and the others. The next two projects are both sidewalk gap projects. They're really similar in terms of most of the scores, except for almost a 10-point difference for equity. So if the city said, hey, we have some funds for sidewalk projects, what are the safe routes to school priorities? The Bertha Holt, the bottom one, would rise to the top above the Adams one just because of that equity piece. So that's where that actually works. We put together a guide for this tool that is available on our website at that link down at the bottom of the page from our evaluation page. And like I said, this guide was made before the fancier version of our tool, but I'm happy to send you the upgraded version. And just so you have my contact information, it's there, although I'm not at the office these days, so please call my mobile if you'd like to reach me. And remember to put any questions in the question bar, and I'm going to pass it over now to Laughton Elliott-Deangelis to talk about our bike parking tool.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to get my screen shared here and we can get started. All right, my name is Laughton Elliott-Deangelis, and I am the Safe Routes to School Coordinator for Springfield Public Schools. And Springfield is part of our Eugene Springfield regional team, of which Sarah Mazze is a part in 4J, and also our smaller school district in the region, Bethel Public Schools. And Sarah just shared about our infrastructure prioritization tool, which is something that she and I were able to develop along with a number of other stakeholders in our region. But long before we had created that tool, our predecessors in both 4J and Springfield, Emma Newman and Shane McRhodes, created another assessment tool, which was designed to help them understand how bike parking differed between schools. And so in many cases, there are large disparities between the quality of bike parking options between schools. And this stems from a number of different reasons, but certainly any school that was built recently will be held to a higher standard. But schools that were built 20 years ago, 40 years ago, are going to have increasingly poorer bike racks. And we know that the quality of bike parking and where bikes are located impact the decision for students and their families to allow their students to ride their bikes to school. And so it's easy to look at a school and say, wow, this bike parking looks really bad, or this bike parking seems to feel really good. But just like our infrastructure evaluation tool, it can be hard to put specific language or to really objectively explain why bike parking at one school is better than bike parking at another school. So Shane and Emma worked to create this tool, which uses some objective measures to grade each school and make it easier to have that conversation, be that with facilities staff, local funding stakeholders in the cities, school districts, the MPOs. And so I'm going to just briefly talk about kind of how the tool works. And if you're interested in using this tool and applying it in your school district, please feel free to reach out. We'll be able to answer some questions at the end, but we'd be more than happy to share this tool so that you can use it in your area. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the successes that we had in the way that we were able to use this tool to bring in funding and get new bike parking enhancements in our schools. So the bike parking assessment uses a variety of simple criteria to provide a score for each school. So in this case, we're looking at the rack, the location of that rack, the quantity of rack, whether it's covered or uncovered, how secure the rack is, and how accessible that rack is, both from bike routes and also to the school itself. So in preparing for this and going through this process, it's fairly straightforward, but right off the bat, you're going to want to get the building capacity, how many students and staff are in a building, and then also recover the bike parking code. And this is important because it will help you realize how close you are. Are you meeting code? Are you above or below code? And scoring accordingly. It's important to familiarize yourself with the different types of racks, and I'll kind of go through and talk about the different types and show you some photos here. And it's important then with that information to go to the schools. You'll do the assessment, wander around, see where the racks are, and you'll get your score for the schools. And at that point, you can kind of compare your scores and have a conversation with relevant stakeholders about why we need improvements in certain areas. So we're all familiar with the variety of different bike racks that you might find at various buildings that you bike to. Of course, the lowest quality is the classic wheel bender. This is usually something that is very low to the ground, only supports the front tire. It gets its name from the fact that bikes fall over, the front tire gets bent. Tragically, we often see just a single wheel, frameless, locked in place on these kind of racks. The front loader racks as well, usually they're a little bit taller, but again, really it's hard to lock more than the front wheel and maybe the very front of that frame. The next generation, of course, was the wave rack, which it's a pretty simple design. It's I could see the value, and it definitely was a leap from the front loader rack because it allows you to lock through the main body of the frame. But really, the highest quality racks now are the staple racks or the inverted U rack, and those are the ones that get the highest point value in our tool. And it looks like my slide might be cut off there, but I believe the highest quality racks, the staple racks, get 40 points in our assessment, and the lowest, the wheel benders, get about 10. So yeah, high quality racks support the bicycle frame at 2 touch points. It's nice to be able to lock the rear triangle of the bike as well as the front triangle of the bike through the front wheel when locking bikes. It's really important that racks have enough space to be used. There's certain schools where maybe you have more rack elements, but in going out on site and doing your assessment, you might find that, in fact, even though there are more rack elements, they would be unusable if if there was bikes trying to use both the front and rear rack because they didn't actually allow for enough space. And so kind of further down the line, when funding has been secured and plans are being made, it's really important to work with facility staff to make sure that they understand what the best practices are and what the distances should be between rack elements, both front and back, and space side to side. Also really important that the bike racks are securely mounted. A lot of times those front loader racks will just be sitting on the ground, which makes theft a pretty big issue. And then finally, just looking for resistance to cutting, rusting, and bending. Those are all important in high quality bike parking. Some other types of racks that you'll see out there, scooter and skateboard racks are becoming more and more common. Decorative racks can be a nice touch, although a lot of times they lack some of the functionality of a staple rack. And then, of course, fancier racks like these double-decker racks that you see a lot in Northern Europe. So with location, we're really just looking for how visible is it from the buildings? Is it intuitive? Can you find it easily? Where are the bike racks in relation to, say, a multi-use path that comes onto campus, or the bike lane that enters campus? And so those are the pieces that we're looking, and you can see here the way that we score that it's out of sight, inconvenient, kind of in some sort of side area, or ideally bike racks are front and center, which really kind of makes a statement to the building community that that biking is an important mode. With capacity, again, important to track down, does your city have a code for bike parking in new construction? Here you can see that we've got the Eugene code, which is what we've used here in Springfield as well in our calculations. And so figuring out how many students or staff people are in the building allows you to determine how many rack elements you'll need to meet code. And it's pretty straightforward. You're either below code for 5 points, above code for 15, or if you're meeting code, you'll get 10 points for those. And then finally, you're measuring how many uncovered racks there are, and also the Eugene code has specifications for covered parking as well. And we think that covered parking is a really great way to encourage riding, incentivize riding, makes a strong statement for the value of biking at the front of a building. Of course, it allows us in the Pacific Northwest to have a place to change out of our rain gear and keeps our seat dry. So those are the basic criteria that we're looking at when we're assessing bike parking. And when Shane and Emma originally created this, they partnered in creating the tool with some bike parking manufacturers, which was great. They were able to get a number of bike racks as part of that project that we were able to install in the years that followed. But at that point, there wasn't really the political will to fund a larger project. When Sarah and Bob Beals, who was in Bethel at the time, and myself were able to do a project to update this tool last year, we were able to figure out what our current need was, and then work with the MPO to get the $75,000 grant for bike parking that we were able to roll out last spring and get those bike racks installed. And so we were able to use $30,000 of that in Springfield. And we were able to bring all of our schools that were in sort of the D and F category up to A's and B's, which has been a really great benefit. And looking back at that data, we have increased the bike use when we've gone out and evaluated how many bikes have been in each rack. We've exceeded all of the sort of before statistics at those schools. So having good bike parking is a really important part of making biking inviting. And yeah, if you have more questions about this tool or would like a copy of this tool so that you can roll it out at your school, please let us know, share your email in the comments, and I would be happy to send that your way today. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Abra. And again, any comments that you have, share them in the comments box and we will address those at the end. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, let me get my screen share going here and we will get rolling. Hopefully, that's the plan. Mhm. Okay. Okay. Hopefully that shows up. And yeah, so my name is Abra McNair, and I am here with the Bureau of Transportation Safe Routes to School program in Portland. I want to start off by recognizing that I can imagine for many people on this call that there's not like that engineering investments are not their top priorities right now in their lives, like thinking about like all of the emotions, all of the heavy things that are happening right now. I know for sure like our work right now is pretty challenging. So I just want to thank everyone for being here, taking in this information, and just like hope you're taking care of yourself and your families. Yeah, I'm definitely pretty emotional right now. So just bear with me. But also in relation to engineering here, I also recognize that Portland is kind of like a big different beast when it comes to Oregon Safe Routes to School. And a lot of things are quite different. So when I was thinking about this presentation, I was trying to like come up with the like, what is it like, what's something that's tangible that someone could take away that would like fit into a smaller Safe Routes to School program. And so started thinking about our primary investment routes, which is our way of prioritizing some of our engineering investments that we're making here in Portland. Also wanting to point out that when we were creating these investment routes and prioritizing our projects, that was back in 2017, which I can say like quote unquote is simpler times, where even though 2017 had a lot of challenges, 2020 became really different. And just right now, like I feel like engineering is often considered to be like very like cut and dry, like steps, like something really simple that we can all like jump into. And but realizing more and more, like especially with the COVID-19 responses and like health issues, all these things, like people needing to get outside and be active and things, and like how the stark disparities of engineering, like what is available to different people in Portland right now is like for people to get outside and be able to safely walk and bike or just get exercise is really like highlighted right now with the of where you live in the city and what's available to you. So just kind of calling that out as well. And this is, so jumping right into it, Sarah was talking about in her presentation that, you know, like there's inadequate funds, like we can't fix everything. We don't have the money to fix everything. And that is the same in Portland. We have, through this process of getting some money from a gas tax, we realized that we still have like $228 million of unfunded projects across the city. And so that's a lot. You know, we have like this tiny bit of money, like 25 million that was funded, and that's super exciting. So we have money, we're doing things, but figuring out what to do, where those projects should go and who gets them is a big part of this. And a little bit of background just for context, in Portland has a gas tax, a 10-cent gas tax that, along with a heavy vehicle use tax, which we called our Fixing Our Streets program, and that was giving transportation infrastructure improvements like $64 million to $70 million over the course of 4 years. We also just got that passed again, so we are going to have a substantial amount of money that's again going to infrastructure improvements across the city. Back in 2017, we had 8 million of that come to us for Safe Routes to School engineering projects. And when we were given that money, and I apologize if things are fuzzy on this map, or too, like we're all doing the best we can from home with what we have, so these might be fuzzy, but when we were given the $8 million, the money was split across different school districts and high school clusters. We have a really large school district in Portland Public Schools, and that is split into like multiple different high school clusters. So each of those clusters was getting funding, and then we have 4 smaller school districts in Portland too, and those all had money split to them. So that's like what we were given. It was like, here's this money, now what are you going to do with it? And we wanted it to be like, we wanted that process to be as efficient like to be able to make like clear decisions and efficient decisions with this money, and also like using this as an opportunity to think about long-term planning too. Like how can we use this opportunity where we're having to make these decisions now that will affect and like help what's happening in the coming years. So one of the first steps, our goal was to identify primary investment routes that would connect to every public elementary, K-8 and middle school campus in Portland. And then also similar to what Sarah was talking about in like prioritizing projects, we wanted to develop a prioritized list of infrastructure projects that would improve safety to get to those, and those all would be on those primary investment routes. And then third, just related to fixing our streets, we wanted to be sure that we had like that we knew which projects we wanted to build first. So
hey, Abra, we're seeing
yes.
a white screen and not your slides.
No, that's terrible. That is so sad. They're really great slides too. Sorry. Hold on one moment. Let me see. Let me do this, and then sorry about that. That's so sad.
And you could take a minute and talk us through once we get it fixed.
Okay.
I'll just share that this is Sarah Mazze again, and I put in, there was a question, someone asking, could they have the example of our infrastructure tool? And I put the link into our chat, the chat section. And we are in the midst in the Eugene Springfield Safe Routes to School program of getting our website improved. And I see that our bike parking guide and our infrastructure guide, or sorry, our bike parking guide is not up there. So I'm going to, for now, it will be up there soon, hopefully next week. But for now, I'll just send you the link to where it is in our Google Drive in the chat section again. And you should be able to download that as a PDF, I think.
Awesome. What can you see now? Nothing still?
Looks like it's working. It says our goals with 3 different images. Yeah, so you can quickly scroll through, catch us up.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Nope, so now it's gone. Okay. Okay. All right. So just, you know, the other slides were pretty good. I feel like they're like not too crazy. These are our school districts. I think we're okay actually. So hopefully you were super engaged in that. But here we go. Okay, so these are our goals. I also wanted to highlight that when we were thinking about like the project prioritization, that kind of directed by our stakeholder advisory committee and going along with PBOT's goals and policies, we doubled the weight of equity when thinking about which projects would be built first. So 60% emphasis on equity of low-income households, considering where communities of color were living and populations that were like English was limited and or not their first language. Safety bubbled up at 30%, and we're thinking about like what are the speed limits where schools are, how many traffic lanes are there, and then also consider like the high crash network in Portland is where like most of our traffic crashes are happening on like 10 streets or like a limited number of streets, and a lot of like is a school located near there, or people have to cross to get to the campus. And then also wanting like similar to like the mutual benefit in Eugene, like talking about that we want to make the biggest bang for our buck, and depending on like wanting to reach the most amount of students to get to school, so like the route density. And the map on the left here, which may be fuzzy, has the shaded areas are where like in Portland where more communities of color are living and where there's more poverty. And you can see that like with the gray circles and the like, that's all like investment needs, like where things are lacking. And again, it's the same in Southwest Portland, which is on like the left side of the screen. There's not a lot of sidewalks in Southwest Portland, but there is also not the same amount of like equity disparities there. So just wanted to point out that these are kind of how we were prioritizing our projects and thinking about them. Okay, so but to jump into the primary investment routes, which was like our first goal, we wanted to we don't do action plans in Portland. Like we have over 100 schools, and we have some action plans that were created a number of years ago for schools, but they highlight like so many different like project needs around a specific campus. Like we just like never would get there. Like, so we do things that we like are not able to create an action plan for every campus in Portland. And so we're kind of trying to think about like how to be a little bit more flexible or a little bit more like just thinking a little bit differently about it. And so we came up with this walk shed concept, which is similar just like to a route to school, but we were thinking about it as like a watershed, like stream concept of where like students are trickling like from their specific houses and then coming onto like 4 to 6 main walkways to get to their campuses. And it was within a 1 mile radius of elementary and K through 8 schools, and then a 1.5 mile radius from high schools, with the like intention of focusing most of our investments on the places where most of the students are going to be walking more of the time. And that helping us to prioritize the like vast need of infrastructure investments that we've got. We started thinking about that with a super handy computer model. And I wonder if this is like what Sarah was talking about, of like they have like this simple tool, like if we like maybe this could be, because we had a consultant do this, but maybe like pairing those two concepts together. Our computer model was identifying routes and then emphasizing those that already had like good crossings in place at major streets. I'm really trying to be direct, because students are often very direct, or like cutting through different ways to get to schools. Almost like creating your own Google directions, like looking on a Google map, and they often give you the most direct route, but sometimes it's not the safest, like you know it a little bit better. So this, like the computer model, I kind of think is like your initial Google search for directions to get from one place to another. That model also considered where most of our student population was living, and then also thinking about housing that's coming in or going to be built soon. At that same time, we were doing community fact checking. We were doing open houses and like had an online survey. We were meeting with school groups, asking people how are they getting to school, where were the issues, you know, like what were their main routes, and sometimes finding that they were cutting through a park or cutting through a field, like doing things a little bit differently, and maybe the computer model wouldn't pick up on that. We went back to the like principals and school leaders and community leaders to double check that the routes that we came up with were ones that actually made sense. And then we had our like our engineering staff at PBOT kind of take another look and think about like the 8 and 80 concept of what, you know, is this crossing at this major street like something where you know, an 8-year-old could actually cross this by themselves, or, you know, like just thinking a little bit differently. So putting another lens on those routes. What we came up with, this is a map of the city, and all of like the lighter lines that are not the interstate are our primary investment routes. And so it's like this interconnected network that sometimes connects to multiple schools, sometimes just leads to one school. All of the little dots and like thicker lines on there are the projects that we highlighted through the process, but and all of those projects are on a primary investment route. So we're focusing all of our efforts there to make those improvements. The benefits of doing that is there's probably more than I'm sharing it the most, but like the kind of a bigger thing that we're seeing is that because we're not focusing on just the few like corners and different things around a school, it's becoming more like a neighborhood concept, like that more people are benefiting from these routes than just people getting to schools. Like, you know, the school commute is a very small amount of time, even though it's like a huge influx of traffic at a certain time of day, but communities are benefiting from these improvements throughout the neighborhood. Also, having these in place has been really helpful for us, and like we're seeing it more and more that some of our planners from PBOT are starting to look at our online map. Like the smaller map on the left, it's got some faded little dots on there because those are unfunded dots, and so a planner can look at our online map and say like, oh, like I'm looking in this neighborhood, this is a crossing that our Safe Routes to School program has highlighted. We should focus some of our funds there, or like look there. So it's really helping us prioritize a little bit better as a bureau. And it's also kind of like Sarah also mentioned the squeaky wheel. It kind of helps us say no sometimes, that we have, you know, we've like done this legwork to meet with communities and talk with people, and we're able to say no sometimes, even like, you know, or like put it in like a separate like pathway of getting a project done. Also on the larger map on the right is kind of highlighting, we have our low traffic neighborhood greenways in Portland, and kind of need to see the crossover between some of our Safe Routes to School primary routes, which are in the blue, and seeing the connection between the neighborhood greenways and the primary investment routes. Some of the challenges that we've got is that like a lot of things change. Like we created these in 2017, there's a new school coming in already, but we kind of have this process in place now where we can go back and create these new primary investment routes. You know, we have, it's just kind of helped us set up a process, but definitely things change and perspectives change, a lot of things change, but so we can't like, this isn't like a set in stone plan. It's a little bit more flexible, which is also kind of nice. We also, as I mentioned, we have $228 million in need, and that's like that's 2017 dollars. So we just, there's a lot of need. We can't fix everything right away. We can't say like walk on these primary investment routes right now because they're not safe enough yet for the level of safety that we need. And also just many more challenges to be seen because, as we know, 2017 looks so different from 2020. And so there's a lot of things to consider out there, but our primary investment routes is a way for us to be flexible and also to be kind of like planning ahead and like knowing where to look when we need to make changes or decisions about infrastructure. And it really helped us to think like a more holistic view of the city of Portland and how people are moving and how communities are using our streets. But like a holistic view that helped us move almost like beyond schools while at the same time thinking about how people are getting to school. So thank you. Sorry so much that I had a white screen for like the first 5 minutes of my presentation, but I think we're ready if people have questions. I think Laughton and Sarah are gonna put their cameras back on, and we are kind of open for some questions from folks if you have them. Oh, okay.